Trust me, I'm an engineer. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. And I'm holding this wheel stud in my hand today for a reason. In today's video I'm going to talk a little bit about the wheel stud replacement on 2010 Honda Insight. So I looked up a couple of videos on YouTube naturally, or did a search on the web on how to replace these studs, and I came across a couple of videos, but it seems like none of them apply to my situation. I don't know what's different with this car or why the situation is like this. I really have no idea. I am not a Honda expert. In any case, this seemed to be a simple task. I needed to replace one stud. Well, actually, yes, one stud out of 4 was kind of cross-threaded by someone. It wasn't really working that great, and these cars have wheel studs, not wheel bolts, not lug bolts, and the threads were not that great on one of the studs. So I figured I can replace one of them, and then I figured, why don't I just replace all 4? And I figured, hey, I can replace these studs with something longer like these H&R studs and install some wheel spacers. But it seems to be that this is not an easy task. It's just purely stupid engineering. That's what it is. So you think you remove all of it. So I'm going to skip removal of the brake caliper. It's somewhere behind. Removal of the brake rotor. It's not that difficult. It's fairly simple. 2 bolts on the brake caliper. The brake rotor is held in place actually by 2 tiny screws like this. I already replaced these with stainless screws because what was on the car was not stainless, and I had to drill those out in order to replace the brake rotors. And now you think, I've done this before on other cars, Nissans namely, and I think Toyotas too, but this is a Honda. So you think that you can just hit the stud, push it out of the hub, and it just comes out on the backside. No, that doesn't happen this way. The backside of the hub, or knuckle, whatever that part where the bearing sits and all, is in the way. Well, first of all, there is the dust shield that is in the way, and second of all, once you knock this stud out, the head of the stud hits the knuckle and or the hub, whatever you call. Well, this is the hub. Not going to go into details. My brain is not working really. It's not working well at this point today. So in a nutshell, what you have to do, you have to cut the dust shield in this place so it's out of the way. It's not going to affect anything. It's still attached with screws to the hub, to the knuckle, and then you have to grind the back side of this right here. Sort of, you have to grind it flat. So whatever tools you have, a die grinder, a cutter wheel, whatever tools you have, you cannot use anything like a file. You have to use a power tool, and you have to cut a flat across. So when you knock the stud out, it actually doesn't have anything to restrict the removal of said stud. And the first attempt that I had, I also kind of ground a flat on the stud itself, because even with this flat here, it wasn't that much of a clearance really for the stud to come out. It seems to be safe to do because, well, I think it is. Trust me, I'm an engineer. So grinding this is not that big of a deal. You take a die grinder to it and just... So the metal is fairly soft. You just do that. It's not difficult. So there is a few ways of stud removal as far as just removing the stud. Well, you basically have to just beat on it. You can, if you think you want to save the stud, you have to protect the threads. You can put a knot on top of it, something like this, and just beat on that knot. So you kind of beat against the threads, but that's also not always a good idea because you can distort the threads by beating on a knot. The other option is to use like an air chisel, I guess. If you don't have any of those, I'm using this punch. This is a brass punch, and well, if you are 100% sure you're not saving the stud, you can just use a hammer and just smack it a few times. And you basically just have to hit it hard enough, and that's pretty much all, I guess. And as you can see, the stud is basically just not going anywhere. Let me try and show it. So what happens at this point is this: the stud, just the head of the stud hits that ledge or that diameter right there, and as you can see, it's basically just, it's got nowhere to go. So you can, well, at this point you also have a couple of options. You can keep beating on this and just force it. The other option, you can try and grind this a little bit right here to make a way, or you can just cut a flat on the head of the stud and turn it, because it's turnable at this point, and then that will give you a bit of a clearance. Well, I got a bit of a flat here, but you can see this still is not really, it's still. So at this point, what I can do, I can just keep beating on the stud like this and knock it out. All of this is in the way. To install the new stud, well, let's imagine, let's pretend this is your new stud and it still wouldn't go in. You have to really grind this well, or just cut a channel into it. So that's really not working. But if you have a flat like I did here, that allows the stud come out and go in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this new stud and basically just grind a flat on it, because I mean, I'm tired. I still have to do the other side. Probably not today, but that's just a lot of stupidity here going on, and I'm having a hard time handling the stupidity today. Unfortunately, these new studs, I have to modify them. That's what I call it. And it's still not really going in. There's no straight shot out of this hole, so that's the problem. Like in T-head studs here. Well, guys, I guess you get the idea. I'm just like, I really need to finish this. I'm frustrated kinda a lot, and I need to finish this. So basically the lesson today is, Honda is stupid. You have to grind this flat on the hub or on the knuckle, and to remove and to reinstall the studs, you have to grind a flat on the head. It doesn't sound like an extremely safe thing to do, but it's not really going to affect the function of the stud. Yes, there is a percentage of the stud head removed, but it's not really going to make anything fall apart, or it's not going to make wheels fly off when you drive this car after you do this modification, I guess. So I guess the other thing is I'm going to show how to pull the new studs in. So once your new stud is in the hub, what you have to do, you have to pull it in so it sits properly. And to do that, you have to just basically put a couple of spacers that fit over the stud, or you can actually, you don't really need to put spacers on. It just helps. And I have this, what is it, M12 by 1.5 nut, or you can use the original lug nut, but it's a cone shaped, and you don't want to really dig into your flat washers or whatever you're using as, or like, it's just basically these are way too short to really make them work and sit against the hub itself. They will never bottom out. They will bottom out because it's acorn type of a nut. It doesn't have a hole through. If you have something like this, you can actually run this all the way through to the hub, but I don't want to do that. It's just way too many turns. I'm just spacing it out and put this nut on like this. This is a 17 millimeter, and then you just start. Well, you have to keep the hub from turning. You can put it in the gear. I'm just holding it with the screwdriver like that to prevent it from spinning. It's going to get pulled in, and you will feel it. And if you don't pull it in all the way when you install the wheel, it's going to finish itself. Once you torque the wheels, you don't want to use a screwdriver against your new studs, because you're going to mess up the threads somewhat. I'm using this just because these two studs are still going to be removed. And there you go, that's the new stud. Threads are fine. These nuts go on all the way. This is the stud number 2, and this is the stud number 1. Also fine. Like I said, if you have a broken stud, or you cross-thread a stud or whatever, and you have to replace them. I'm doing this just for the fun, so to say. Well, I'm replacing studs because I need longer studs here on this car. if you have to replace the studs, you have to knock them out, and the engineering on this car is really ridiculous. They just don't come out. They should have made a channel or something to, I mean, to let the studs, studs, they are sort of a replaceable item, because, well, they may rust, they may get cross-threaded easily by someone in a shop in a hurry. That happens quite often, actually. Those people with the impact wrenches, they just put that nut into the socket and just slam it on and just wrench impact it on. So that happens quite often from my experience. The studs get cross-threaded quite often in the shops. So if you need to replace that, then you have to deal with all this stupidity. So seems to be an easy thing to do, but it's not that much fun. On these cars, at least. If you don't want to do any of this, you have to, as far as I understand, you have to disassemble everything here. You have to remove the axle nut, which is a 32 millimeters, by the way, if anyone needs to know that. So you have to push the axle out. So you have to remove this axle nut, you have to push the axle out, then you have to probably use a bearing puller or something, and because I'm sure the bearings are pressed into this. Well, I might be wrong about that, but hopefully there is a snap ring that you remove and it all falls apart. But my feeling is that it's not the case with this level of engineering or type of engineering. So taking all the whole knuckle apart just to replace one stud, that's just really ridiculous. Imagine you have just one stud to replace that someone cross-threaded in a shop, or shop did that. So imagine all this job for a shop. Well, let's finish this. Let's knock 2 more studs out and finish this job. And the studs are in place, and installing the longer studs allows you to run spacers, and this is H&R 5mm spacer. I think it is 5mm. I don't recall, I bought it a while ago, but this is H&R brand. Unfortunately, this is not a hub centric, it is a flat spacer. People use spacers. I hate spacers. This is like, there's no other option. Well, there is another option with the upgrade that's coming up in part 2, like I said, but this is the least I hope this was going to be the least painful way of doing that upgrade, but it appears that it's well, it's not terrible, but it is what it is. So if I had a choice, I wouldn't use spacers, but in this case it's a Honda and it's okay to use spacers on a Honda. So the wheel goes on. Honda's lug nuts are 19mm. So the downside to this is that now the bolts, or the nuts in this case, are going to now center the wheel to the hub, and that's not the best thing to have. I guess I will go for a test drive to verify that the wheel is not going to vibrate or shake or anything. And guys, the part 2 is going to be some brake upgrade on this car. I want to improve the brakes, and I will show how to improve the brakes on these cars and how to make them actually look cooler and work better actually. And that's going to be part 2 of this video. And the next video on Honda that I'm planning is going to be me talking about and showing how to replace rear shocks and the front struts. So I'm going to almost 200,000 miles on this car, 2010, still original Honda struts and shocks. So I'm going to be talking about shocks replacement and strut replacement, and I'm going to show how it's done. Well, let's get the car down on the ground and torque the nuts, and I guess we'll go for a test drive or something like that to verify that it's all good. Yeah, Honda, Nissan, JDM. I know what you're going to say, but in my opinion, all of them suck big time. The engineering sucks on these cars. Most of it is just stupid. Well, yeah, I guess engines. Honda is an engine company, so maybe that explains why the rest of the car is just junk.